I know, it's difficult, but
What exactly was the thought process behind that? I'll just run over this protester with my car, surely I won't get in trouble.
I mean,
Or,
yeah, well, no, it's like, okay, imagine this, right? You've been in line to get into, you've been in this line to get into campus, sitting in your car with your car basically idling for like 40, 45 minutes. You're 30 minutes late for your class, right? The picketers come in front of the car, stand there for like a couple of minutes, let one car through, then close again, right? If you think you can, like, sneak through while they've parted for another person to go through, you'll probably hit someone. That's the situation. If they're slowing people down, just let them. Just let them. Don't try anything sneaky, right? Because, you know, there's one professor who's like, the strike was like, the professors went on strike in like 2017, and he's still in physio. So, please don't hit anybody. And I'm not saying that because you're young. I'm saying it because you have cars, some of you. I'm not one of those people who's racist against young people and gives you high insurance premiums just because you're young. I think you guys are trustworthy. Also, I find that like a lot of my classes have been tracking like older than you might suppose, like mid to late 20s in a lot of cases. Like a lot of people think college students are all like, you know, like 18 to 20, but this is no longer largely the case, I think. Yeah. I'm not going to ask your ages because that's very impolite. While I'm on the subject of fun stuff, the Game Dev Club, yay! If any of you are interested in making video games for like an extracurricular thing, the Game Dev Club will be meeting 11 o'clock on Mondays in, E112, or during Common Hour in the same room. Come on down, make some video games, it's a lot of fun. But we have a room and a time now, so. Okay. Server-side web programming. Let's continue the horror show. So, just to review a couple of important points from last time. When you're talking about learning a new language, one of the very first things you should discover about that language is how the type system works. In PHP, PHP should strike all of you as like a kind of odd combination of JavaScript and Python, but with a few unique things that are all on its own. In fact, PHP does almost nothing that is actually original. The parts that you don't recognize are most likely being borrowed from Bash scripting. But of course, you guys haven't done Bash scripting, so you'll think that's PHP, right? Things like the $ symbol in front of variables, that's actually something that you have in Bash scripting. So, all right, sure, fine, okay. PHP's type system. It is a weakly typed language and a dynamically typed language. Can anybody tell me what it means to be dynamically typed? Python is also dynamically typed. JavaScript is also dynamically typed.
you don't have to declare the data type of the variable, it just kind of assumes what it is.
Yes. You don't have to declare a data type with your variable. The system figures out what the type could or should be using a process called type inference. So the type that a variable is supposed to be is inferred from what you assign to it, right? Which makes a certain degree of sense. So not only is the type of a variable inferred from what you assign to it, that type can change during program execution. This is in stark contrast to Java. Java is a statically typed language, a strongly statically typed language, which means that types of things do not change. I'm sure all of you are sufficiently familiar with Java's type system. So far, so good? So who wants to tell me what a weak type system is? What does it mean for typing to be weak?
I believe it's when you can compare types together and have them equate to each other with different types.
You can equate things of different types together and compare them and see if they're equal. Yeah, generally I would agree with that definition. So when a language supports weak equality, it has weak typing. So if we recall, hopefully we recall this from JavaScript, we have two equality operators in JavaScript, a strong one and a weak one. The strong one checks both value and type, right? So 5 triple equals the string 5 will come out false. Weak equality will perform implicit type conversion before determining whether something is true or not. Now, in JavaScript, we kind of hand-waved this away a little bit. A lot of the difficulty of PHP as a language has to do with funny type conversions, unusual or odd type conversions, right? Everybody remembers from last class, how does true print as a string? How does false print as a string? Empty string. Yes. So when we go through type conversions, keep in mind that these are the same procedures that are used when you're using weak equality. Strong equality is equality in the Java sense, right? Make sense? These are characteristics that are shared by JavaScript. However, it's been a whole summer since we touched JavaScript, right? So, people need to be reminded more often than they need to be taught. So, does that make sense? Any questions about that? Type system? Okay. As far as I know, PHP does not contain a sublanguage consisting of only 6 characters through which all PHP programs are expressible. I don't believe that's the case, because, like that is the case in JavaScript. So, PHP is more in the C style than the Python style. The normal style of indentation is not required, but strongly encouraged, right? It doesn't carry any semantic weight like it does in Python. PHP and JavaScript have native support for associative arrays, which are arrays of key value pairs. These are the same concept as dictionaries in Python or hash maps in Java. Would you like to see how an associative array works? If you take a JavaScript object and strip out any methods, you've basically got an associative array. PHP is the only language I know of that calls it an associative array. So, please get your Apache web server running. Open up your Explorer. There we go. I'm just going to make a new folder for today, 2025-09-10. There we go. Let's save a file there. Arrays.php. Localhost, :1080, take your folder, there is our PHP script. It currently does nothing because there's nothing in it. Is everybody that far? Put your hand up if you're good. Good, that's most of you. So, associative arrays then. So, arrays in a regular sense are declared as follows. But of course, if we remember from last time, you can't just print an array directly. The array to string conversion function simply says, yes, this is an array. Hooray! Doesn't actually show you the contents of it. Fortunately, there is a method, well, it's actually a function. There's a function in PHP which will take any complicated data structure, convert it to a string. This is JSON encode. And there you have it. But you may be saying to yourself, JSON encode? This is not JSON. What's going on here? Well, dear reader, as a matter of fact, that is actually correct and proper JSON. Remember that the outermost layer on a JSON may be either an object, associative array, or an array in the regular sense. Each of the items in either of those things may be another data structure, array or associative array, integer, float, string, boolean, null. An array of 4 integers is in fact correct and valid JSON. So JSON encode works. Does this make sense? So far so good? Any questions? Okie dokie. So much for arrays in the regular sense. Now let's create an associative array. So associative arrays are a little bit special in their syntax. we are creating key value pairs. In the case of PHP, the keys will always, always, always be strings. The values may be anything else. So, something like this. I know that you're not supposed to use break tags, but come on, it's PHP. So, this is a very useful thing. This shows us the difference between this declaration in PHP and the same declaration in JavaScript. This is how you do it in PHP. This is how you do it in JavaScript. Note that in PHP, we are still using square braces, whereas in JavaScript, curly braces are used for this. Further, we have double-lined arrow linking item, or linking key to value. Does this make sense? So, of course, an associative array of one item isn't very interesting. Let's add a few more. Somebody name a fruit.
Orange.
Orange. Somebody name a fruit. Pineapple. Feel like you're on Family Feud? Somebody name a fruit.
Tomato.
Tomato. Ooh. Nice. Somebody name a fruit.
Kiwi.
Kiwi. And just for fun, here's another fruit for you. Aha! Did you know that those are fruit? Does anybody know what the definition of a fruit is? At the back, sir.
Something that contains
Yes. In order to be a fruit, it has to contain seeds. It has to be the fruiting body of the plant, the thing that it uses for reproduction. So, cucumbers. There you go. Cucumbers are a fruit. So are pumpkins. Pumpkins are also a fruit. All squashes are fruits. They contain seeds. Yes. So, there you go. That's how that gets encoded. So, all that is very good and useful. It's important to know how to read and write these things. Fortunately, it's very simple. We all know how you use numeric indexes to manipulate a regular normal array. With an associative array, you also are using indexing, but the indexes are the keys. So, if I want to read the number of tomatoes in this array, echo a sock at tomato. Please note, it has to be a string. You must include the quotes, otherwise it will think this is a variable name, right? Make sense? Any questions so far? So, okay. That's reading. Writing works very similarly. Associative at tomato plus equals 10. And you can see we are now reading 30. Make sense? Hopefully this isn't rocket science. Hey? Don't worry, the course gets harder. So, all right. Now, let's discuss how to put things into and take things out of these things. All right? So, although we have been talking about these things, we've been calling them arrays, they actually aren't. They are actually lists. That's their implementation. One of the frustrating things about PHP is that, like this thing cannot possibly be an array. Why is it being called an array? Right? Did I ever do lists versus arrays with you guys last semester? Maybe I skipped it in the interests of time, but there's a difference between lists and arrays, and these are definitely lists and not arrays. So, with a regular array, there is a very handy function that we have that will add a new element to an array. Array underscore push. You then have to say what array you're pushing to and the value which you are pushing. You see, we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Make sense? We also have pop So push and pop are inverse operations. They're kind of like addition and subtraction. A push operation takes a value and pushes it onto or into the data structure at the last point in the data structure. A pop operation removes the most recently pushed value. So what we've basically described is a stack, which is one of the most elementary data structures. Have you guys heard of stacks before? Little bit? Okay, this one I will do. Okay, let me see here. So, a stack, the best physical analogy, presumably most of you at home have a room in your house dedicated to the preparation of foodstuffs, right? Everyone has a room where you go to like microwave your pizzas, right? Inside of these rooms, we tend to have these wooden structures with lateral pieces of wood running inside of them. The purpose of these structures is to keep the various items required to microwave the pizzas. A cupboard, if you will. Within your cupboard, it is likely that you have plates, right? How do you store your plates?
In a stack.
In a stack, That's right, you take all of your plates, the plates are actually designed so that they can all stand in one neat pile piled on top of each other, which is very convenient. When you need a plate, where do you take a plate from in that stack? The top. When you have used and cleaned and dried that plate, where do you put that plate back onto that stack? You put it back onto the top of the stack, typically, right? So, if you have a stack of like 10 or 15 plates in your house, or in your cupboard, and like you're the only person using the plates, it's likely that like you're probably only using like the top 3 or 4 plates on the stack, depending on how often you do your dishes, right? Because you're just kind of pushing and popping the same plate every time, really, right? So that's what the analogy is for these data structures. When you push something onto a stack, you are taking a plate and you are sliding it onto a stack of plates. When you pop, you are removing whatever's on the top of that stack, right? The stack is also known as a last in, first out buffer, because it always gives you, as its output, whatever was most recently put into it, right? You can use stacks to do all kinds of interesting and complicated things, like depth first search algorithms, graph searching algorithms, which if you're interested in graph searching algorithms, I highly recommend taking the Math of Gaming course as an elective in your final semester, or close to your final semester. So, stacks, yes, very good. So, associative arrays are a little bit different. A little bit different. In terms of mathematics, man, how good is your set theory? You guys have done math, right? You guys done discrete math? You done a little bit of set theory? Maybe? If I were to say, I'm going to draw a wibbly-wobbly cloud thing here, and a little wibbly-wobbly cloud thing here, and I called this one the natural numbers, and I called this one the integers, right? And I said, elements of the natural numbers map to elements of the integers, right? You would know what I'm talking about? If I were to tell you that an array of integers is exactly this, with the additional constraint that you have to start here and go through the numbers in order, would I blow your minds? Hopefully, maybe? No? Okay. So, that's what you should think of an array. That, in terms of math brain, that's how you should be thinking of an array. An array is a mapping between the natural numbers and some other domain, right? It could be the integers, it could be real numbers, that would give you doubles, approximately. It could also be strings, right? So, now, if I designated this as perhaps the set of all possible strings, and I said some elements of the set of all possible strings map to some elements of some other domain, we would now have an associative array. Right? Does that make sense? So, when you get into set theory, when you're talking about different domains, one of the interesting things you can talk about is what sort of properties are contained within these domains. let's consider the natural numbers for a moment. One of the properties of the natural numbers is equatability, right? You have a test to see if one natural number is equal to another one. We also have that in strings. We can tell if two strings are the same string. This is good. This is a good start. Another property that we have for the natural numbers is ordering, right? Natural numbers, you can tell if one is greater than or less than another one, because the natural numbers are supposed to occur in a sequence, right? You can tell whether they are higher or lower in that sequence. That tells you whether they are greater or lesser values, even if you sort of ignore the fact that the natural numbers also ostensibly, exist in physical reality, right? It's like 1, little 2, little 3, little computers, right? Ordering. So does ordering exist on strings? Sort of. Explain.
Like you could kind of do it alphabetically, I guess, but like in the computers, the strings also have like a number associated.
Yes. Very good. So yes, generally strings are also ordered, right? Everything that we put into a computer is ultimately expressed in ones and zeros as numbers. So, yes, strings also have an ordering, right? But the ordering that we have on strings is not like the ordering we have with natural numbers. With natural numbers, when we declare an array, we can say with certainty that if the if you have an array of 5 elements, then you always know which natural numbers are used for it, 0 through 4, right? The same is not true of strings, because similarly to real numbers, there's an infinite number of strings between any two strings, right? If I were to say, how many strings are there between the first 2 words in the English dictionary, A and aardvark, right? If these have to be words, it's 0. But if you're allowed to use nonsense strings, well, you've got AA, you've got AAA, AAAA, AAAA, off to infinity, right? Not to mention, you can vary these letters as well past the second A. You've got actually many orders of infinity between any two strings, so you cannot rely on them being in an adjacent sequence, the way that you can with the natural numbers, right? So, okay, sure. Why am I telling you all of this abstract math stuff? Some types of operations work on numeric arrays that don't work for associative arrays. Most particularly, you can't really write a loop that's like a standard for loop to loop through these things, right? Because there's no way to turn a loop variable into the strings that would be the keys to this thing, right? Mathematically, it's impossible. So what do we do instead in order to loop over one of these things? Any guesses? It's the approach that Python takes. It's a for each loop. So you can configure a for each loop in PHP to to iterate through each of the elements of your associative array. It pulls out keys, it pulls out values, right? But regular loops don't work. Does that make sense? Okay. I kind of want to introduce you to this way of thinking because this way of thinking will be very useful to you when you hit data structures and algorithms. Which, how many semesters do you have to go before you have to do data structures and algorithms?
It's the next one.
Shut up, that's the next one. I want to teach that course so bad, but I'm not standing on a high enough rung on the ladder to teach that course. That course is only given to people who it's the desirable course that everybody wants to teach because everything in it is so cool, right? So, in terms of your standard loops, everything is working pretty much the same way that it did in Java and JavaScript. One thing to keep in mind though, whereas in Java you're doing something like that, right, for a for loop. In JavaScript you're doing something like that for a for loop. Here, you just assign it, right? You don't need a keyword to declare a variable, so you just do it. Okay? But that's not the type of loop that we're talking about. So, oh man, I always forget what the keyword is. There you go. Oh, it's as. Yeah, okay. So first of all, this is something that I actually do agree with in PHP. PHP is annoying because I can't be universally mad at it. Some of the things it does are actually better than the way other languages do it. So calling a for each loop is that's good and makes sense. The word in the middle is as. So we say for each associative array element as key arrow value. This declares the key and value variables. So we can do something like this. I have a sock. I have value key. There we go. Oh, but I should insert a break as well. So I know that you're not supposed to use breaks, but in PHP, when you're basically using PHP to do a terminal type thing, you kind of have to use them. Oh, Apple. There you go. Very good. Does this make sense? So far, so good? Question?
Can you freeze the side of the relay? I cannot see very well from here.
The code?
Yes, please.
Sure. Is that better? I think that's as big as I can make it and still have it be functional. So if you can't see it at that point, I do have some spaces in the front row which you're welcome to use as well. So So I've done something a little bit funny here. Anybody notice the strangeness, the oddity? What have I not had to do?
The variables are within the double.
Quotes?
The word is, yeah.
Yeah. The variables are within the double quotes, yet they have still printed their values. I have not had to do string conversion. I have not had to use the concatenation operator, right? Well, it is and it isn't. So, again, this is borrowed from Bash script, Bash scripting. Now, would I shock you if I told you that the SQL injection attack was basically invented by PHP because of this? We'll see how that works a bit later. But mixing variable values into strings and then sending them off is actually somewhat perilous. We'll see how that works a little bit later. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but just keep in mind that this is a thing. I'll show you how this is dangerous later. But yes, it is fewer keystrokes. So, now, let me show you something else. Single quotes. So, someone tell me the difference between double and single quotes in Java. Someone tell me the difference between single and double quotes in Java.
Double quotes are for strings, single quotes are for characters.
Very good, yes. Double quotes are for strings, single quotes are for characters in Java. Someone tell me the difference between single and double quotes in Python. Eh? No, I'm pointing to you. You were shaking your head. You got an answer?
Yeah, there is none.
There is none. Very good. It's a trick question. There is no difference between single quotes and double quotes in Python. How about JavaScript? Anybody? JavaScript? Nobody cares to hazard a guess? Is it because JavaScript is so freaky? Is that why nobody wants to answer?
I just never use single quotes in JavaScript.
Well, so in JavaScript, single and double quotes are the same as in Python. They don't matter which one you use. You didn't have to use single quotes.
Okay. So just like a formatting choice.
Yeah, it literally is. Although, like, there's a bit of an asterisk. When I say, like, in Python, it doesn't matter which ones you use. The asterisk is unless they're trying to contain the other type of quote. So, for example, a string containing single quote must use double quotes or escape the quote character, right? But that's kind of like an edge case, you know? Same things, other way around too. In Python, single quotes can contain a double quote character, and if you want to use double quotes all the way, you must escape your double quote characters, right? Okay, fine. Now let's see the difference between single and double quotes in PHP. Oh, get out of here, you. What just happened? Where did did all of my data go? I had data here before.
The variables are now printed as a literal string.
Yes, that's the difference. So in PHP, single quotes make this a literal string, an exact literal string. So it basically disables or turns off that business of inserting variables. Make sense? So far so good? I must say, this type of like nitpicky language type stuff is the type of thing that I like to make test questions out of. So please be careful to pay attention. Very good. So, they're not worth, it's maybe like 1 or 2 marks, right? But yeah, when you're doing like a test question for me, pay attention to whether the quotes are single or double quotes, if it matters in the language, and know what that means, So, single, double quotes, good. Good. I suppose I should also show you how to get stuff into and out of associative arrays, since we're already here. So, the easiest way to add a new element to an associative array is simply to assign to it. Right? You can start off an array as empty and build the thing up using statements like this. Now, deletion is also somewhat interesting. Okay. Brief pause while I look up the documentation. Oh, and by the way, that is the name that PHP gives to double colon. Any C++ programmers in the crowd? What is the double colon in C++? So it's scope or namespace resolution, right? So that's basically here in PHP, it's doing the same job. It's scope or namespace resolution, but they have this name for it, which nobody can ever remember. Unless you speak Hebrew, because apparently those are words in Hebrew, rendered in Roman characters. There is the search. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. You do it like that. There we go. Pardon me. Yeah, so if you give it an element of the associative array, like this, and then call unset, it's gone. Make sense? Another useful thing to know how to do with an associative array is test it to see if a key exists in it. In Python, we have the in keyword that does this. Key in dictionary, true, false. here we have is set. If is set associative at rump melon echo fictional fruit found, else echo yes, we have no rump melons. So you can see is set grump melon gives us a false result because there are no grump melons in the array. If, however, we add grump melons to the array, just a single one, then we have found the fictional fruit. Unless grump melons actually exist. There's like a huge, like frankly ludicrous number of fruit that exist in the world, you know? It's very possible that grump melons actually exist. So, does this make sense? Cool. I mean, if a fruit as improbable as a dragon fruit exists, pretty much every other fruit has to exist too, right? Any questions? All useful things to know? Very good. Anybody have a, I want to see you do this in PHP? No? Okay. Have you guys seen ternary operator? Oh, yes.
So with unset, is that unsetting based off of the key? Because like, naturally reading that would be the value, right?
You would think so, right? This is one of the ways in which PHP kind of only vaguely makes sense. Yes, in theory, this should be performing a lookup operation, right? But I'm pretty sure if you provide the value, it won't work. Let's try it. So pineapple has 15. Let's see what happens if we unset 15. Yeah, unexpected 15. So, yeah, yes, I know. This should be evaluated to 15 and then 15 passed to unset, but for some reason that's not the way that PHP works. Any other questions? Let's see, we've got about a half an hour left in class, right? Good. So, I believe we talked about this last time in class, but we'll talk about it one more time. So, the way that if conditions work, or conditions in general, how they work is a little bit on the strange side. Although there are like very old reasons that this is the case. So, the way that conditionals are defined in PHP, they don't really care what type it is. Like, I'm pretty sure in Java, or maybe this isn't the case, but certainly in some statically typed languages, your condition is expected to result in a Boolean, right? And if it doesn't result in a Boolean, then something has gone wrong. If 15 is considered nonsense, right? Because of weak data typing, here we are basically only looking for the thing in the brackets to either be 0, in which case it's false, or to be something other than 0, in which case it's true. So if I put a numeric 20 right here, would I get this to print? Yes. If I were to put the integer 0 here, would this print? It would not. So, you remember me saying that there's a whole sort of cluster of things that all equate to 0? These are all things that will activate the false branch of an if statement as well. 0, null, empty string, I believe empty array, and Boolean false. Does that make sense? The thing that I was explaining last time was that you can also even put an assignment statement inside of here, and as a matter of fact, unfortunately, you'll find a lot of PHP code where that is the case. We'll see examples of it further along, but essentially, in PHP, an assignment statement has a return value, and that return value is the value which has been assigned. So if you say x is equal to 6, or x is assigned 6, inside of an if statement, x is assigned 6. X is assigned 6, and because the return value of that assignment is the value assigned, which is 6, 6 is also passed to the condition. Is 6 0? Not a trick question. Nope. 6 is not equal to 0, therefore, we activate the true branch. So the reason that you see all kinds of funny assignment things inside of if statements is that PHP basically only kind of recently got exception handling. A lot of the sort of old legacy base of PHP does the thing that we told you should never ever do once you know how to do exception handling, right? A lot of the functions are returning null or false on failure conditions, right? So we're going to examine one function called filter input. It reads information coming from an incoming data packet. If that information is not there to read in the first place, it returns null, right? Instead of throwing an exception, it returns null. Because it doesn't throw an exception and returns null, you use if statements to check it, not try catches, right? Which means what a lot of people tend to do is if you have a function that might return false or null, they actually call that function in the if statement guard. Optionally, they assign it to a value in case that thing is necessary later on, which it often is. Because another thing that PHP likes to do, because it's dynamically typed, is it likes to dump its failure condition and valid output into the same variable. We'll see how this works a little later on. But yeah, so that's like, it's an awful language. We're not going to have much fun. But to be fair, you know, most of its main competitors are awful as well, so it's really just picking what kind of awful you'd like to work with. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, that's what I just talked about, yes, yes, yes. Ooh, here's one, okay. So, new file. Let's imagine we have a PHP script that kind of, like, does some stuff, and then eventually results in x being assigned the value 10, right? And let's imagine that we want that value to appear inside of a website, right? Actually appear to the user. That's our output, right? The way that we would do things in JavaScript is we would take this variable, we get a DOM reference, we take that DOM reference and we, take inner HTML and we modify the string value, and that's how we would put data into a web page. Because PHP is directly modifying the string that is the file, there is no DOM. There is only string. We are pre-DOM. We have not had the HTML loaded by the browser. We do not have a nice, lovely, object-oriented way of doing things. We are splicing strings together, like cave people. So this is kind of a typical pattern for PHP. Mixing up a whole bunch of PHP calculation code into and strewn amongst your HTML is like bad design. It makes it more difficult to work. Right? You guys remember Java? You guys remember the model view distinction? Right? That would be the opposite of model view distinction. That is model view confusion. So, if you want to put all of your HTML and your PHP all in one file together, generally, make the top half of your file the PHP code, make the bottom half your HTML code, but insert variables from your PHP code where you have to. That way, most of your PHP is separate from your HTML. Does this make sense? Separation of concerns. It makes it much easier to find things. So, very good. Let's load this up. Did we save it? Oh, it's an HTML. Sorry everyone. It has to have the .php file extension, index.php. Sorry. I have 10 problems and PHP as well. So. Delete that thing. There we go. So, all right. So here's an interesting thing though. And this one is like, this one's kind of tough to wrap your noodle around. To understand how this next thing works, you have to understand that with PHP, you're always flipping into or out of interpreter mode, right? Anytime you've used a PHP block like that, you are in interpreter mode. Interpreter mode can have an effect on HTML mode. Watch this. Let's say I have, oh, I don't know, this same associative array from earlier. Let's say I wanted to make an innocent, sweet little HTML table, right? Containing these as columns, right? Well, table, thank you very much. We know that we need a number of rows equal to the number of elements in this array, but we want that to be dynamic, right? We don't want to like decide that that's always going to be 7 elements, because it might not be always 7 elements. That's bad design. We don't hard code values like that. This is how we do it. Open up PHP mode. For each associative as key arrow value, and starting to get freaked out a little? Here be dragons. TR and TR. TD. PHP. T. Oh, here's a nice little abbreviation for you. When you're just inserting like the value of one variable, you can say PHP echo X, or you could say question mark equals. This is a short form for this, PHP echo. Value, pardon me. There we go. And of course, I hope we can recognize a HTML table with no additional formatting. Throw in a quick style block. There you go. So, okay. You may notice this is at least a lot more compact than the way JavaScript does it, right? You know, it looks a lot more similar to the structure of a vanilla HTML table. It resembles the HTML table. However, this feels like nonsense. Doesn't that feel like nonsense? Yeah, it gives you like the. So, unfortunately, the best way I have of explaining how and why this works is to explain these constructs in terms of the basic constructs that they are made out of. So, can anybody tell me what a go-to is? Anybody know what a go-to is? I'm not surprised. For the go-to is forbidden magic. It is one of the elder arts of our discipline. You're not allowed to use them, go-tos. It is magic too strong and too powerful. We have sealed go-tos away with the sacred sword of sealing things away. That's what we've done. So, a go-to statement allows you to arbitrarily jump to another point in a program. Right? It used to be go-tos were all you had. You had jumps and you had conditional jumps, and that's all you had. If you ever have occasion to program in assembly languages, that's still all you have. The go-to is an operation supported by the CPU. Generally speaking, people don't program in them anymore. Because, has anybody heard the term spaghetti code? Right? This is the origin of the term spaghetti code. So, I'd like you to imagine the line of a program's execution looking like this. Now let's imagine here we have a jump going down here. Down here we can either jump here or up there, right? Here we jump there, there we jump there, 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 there. You see how it starting to look like a great big tangled clump of spaghetti with strands going everywhere and you can't tell where one starts and one ends, right? That's why we don't use go-tos anymore. So basically what happened over time is that people started standardizing the ways that they used go-tos, and we had a couple of, we had a small number of sort of standard go-to structures that good programmers were using, and your cowboys used their own things and tried to assure their own job security by the fact that nobody but them could read their own code. So these basic structures were things like while loops, do-while loops, switch statements, and if statements, if-else branching. If you take an if statement and break it down into its constituent components, if statements are made out of go-tos. While loops are made out of go-tos. If statement, all of these, all control flow is ultimately done by go-tos. Right? So, what does opening squiggle brace actually mean? It means this is a point you can go to. With go-tos, you call these labels. Right? So we have a start of loop label. What does closing brace mean? It means go to start of loop. Right? So it means go to here, test condition, and then continue loop if necessary. Right? So if you think about it like that, imagine right, our for each loop, a loop in general, right? The condition comes out true, we do the loop, which means basically execution in PHP mode is allowed to progress. We turn off PHP mode, we're back in HTML mode, do the thing, do the thing, do the thing, come back here, jump back up to the top. So we execute a goto, return to line 27, returns to line 27, goes through it again, return to line 27, goes through it again, return to line 27, right? Now, if this condition comes out false, we go to the closing brace. So, whoosh, go into HTML mode, continue down. Hopefully that makes a little bit of
It
sense,
makes sense, but it's horrible.
right? Yes?
Is this considered better form than if you had put, like, just used one PHP tab and put all of the other tabs in echoes?
So, you can do that. Like, you can do the thing with purely print state. That's a very intelligent question, thank you. You can do the whole thing in echo statements, absolutely. The problem is, writing HTML as HTML also has certain advantages, right? Like, if you consider, like, for example, you know those great big blocks of HTML that were your, like, bootstrap components, right, back in JavaScript? Probably don't want to do that, right? That at least it makes sense to break back into HTML mode, do it in HTML, then break back in, right? So it's like, it's another one of these issues of using whichever language is best at the task, right? HTML is the best language for writing HTML in. You can use a PHP to, if it's only this much, right? Then you can do this, all of this with echoes. But the longer and more complicated it becomes, the more you don't want to do that, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Always try to use the languages for whatever they're best at. Any other questions? Cool. Yeah. So that's. If statements work too, not just loops, but loops are kind of like a nice example, Actually, any control flow, any control structures work. You could do this with switch statements as well. Sorry, question.
Sorry, you need to scroll up in your code. I'm missing a line.
Sure. There you go. The array is just the one copied from the other one. Yeah. Oh, yes, sorry.
I still have a question on where we go to find the link to the video.
Oh, I posted it to the landing page for the Canvas shell.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's return to single versus double quotes for a brief spell, and then we'll see how much we get in the next 10 minutes. So let's go back to the other one. I'm going to have to name this something other than index. Or just say arrays.php. There we go. So, here, right? I'd like to return to this line. We're now talking once again about single versus double quotes. So we know that with double quotes, any variables that we put here will be printed. But there are certain conditions and restrictions on that. The parser needs to be able to read that name, basically. So it works like this, right? Or, sorry, this version of it works. If I remove this space, let's see what happens. There we go. The space removes, that's fine. The reason that works, opening round brace is not a legal character in a variable name. So as soon as we hit a character that's not legal for a variable name, it knows, okay, this isn't a variable name anymore, so the rest of it is, so we'll just look that up, right? However, if we include a character that is legal in a variable name, for example, underscore, right? This becomes a problem. We cannot find this undefined variable, key underscore s, even though for us, we know that this is supposed to be the variable name, we just wanted this on the end of whatever the output was. There are a couple of options that we have to deal with this. One is to just break it out into regular concatenation, like so. Now, does anybody remember what character we use for concatenation in PHP?
Dot.
Dot, that's right, very good. I love it when people pay attention in class. Everything works. But you may be saying to yourself, this is somewhat clunky. It works, but it's somewhat clunky. I want something with fewer keystrokes, thank you very much. Well, this works as well. You can also use mustaches. That also tells PHP when to stop interpreting characters as variable name and when to continue on with the string. Make sense? Any questions? You can also do things like access indices of arrays inside of these things, whereas you can't otherwise. But honestly, it's acceptable to just use the dot method. That's fine. And reliable. So do the reliable thing, you know? That's my advice. So, good. Let me just check to see. There we go. Don't fall over. So what this bit is talking about is, okay, all right. I'll tell you what. Just as a taster, a preview of coming attractions, I'll show you why it's dangerous to just splice your strings directly into other strings without checking them first. So, when we put values into strings, those values can contain HTML tags. So for example, if orange is actually strong tag, Strongest 10 you've seen. Ta-da! 10 becomes strong. What other types of HTML tags exist? Anybody?
Could you put JavaScript in there?
You can put JavaScript in there.
Oh, that'll get me. See why this is.
Alright? Yeah? Alright. How about this one? Script. Script. Alert. You've been hacked, son.
Oh,
That should have sent a little tingle down your spine. So, that is called a cross-site scripting attack. So, basically, in general, most of the reason you take input from people is to have that input somehow, like, affect things, affect the outcome. You know, the input should have something to do with the output, right? When the input comes from the user, comes from the client, if you do something silly, like just echo it back to them, they can run JavaScript on your website. They can run any JavaScript they want. Now here's the thing. A lot of the time, this information is derived from get parameters. Get parameters are in the link, right? Which means that if you encode something like a script attack into a link, send it to a bunch of people's grandmothers by email, and those unfortunate grandmothers click on the links, right? You can send to people, and let's say that script, it's not something innocuous like this. Let's say it's like source evil persons McEvil's server.evil, right? The evil script will run on poor old grandmother's client, on poor old grandmother's web browser, meaning that whatever she was doing, possibly her online banking, possibly her, her subscription to crochet patterns or whatever it is, this has been breached. Someone has done something nefarious. The types of nefarious things you can do I have time? Okay. You can steal session cookies, duplicating secured sessions. You can install keyloggers, extract usernames and passwords. How many of you use use passwords for more than one site? How many people will admit to it? Yep. Every time you reuse a password, you are opening yourself up to exactly this kind of nonsense. This is the type of thing that awaits you in this course. You have, like security is important. You're going to learn more about internet security from this course than you thought possible. I have some fun YouTube videos to show you about the middle of the course too. But yeah, all right, let's get to databases.